Welcome to Vanderbilt Business Live. I'm Eric Johnson. I'm here today with Professor Tim Vogus. Tim is the faculty director of the Leadership Development Program at Owen and also the deputy director of Vanderbilt's Frist Center for Autism and Innovation. Welcome, Tim.
Thanks. I'm really excited to be here, especially during Autism Acceptance Month this month.
Well, speaking about which, it's an area of your own active research and passion. And when you talk about neurodiversity in the workplace, you like to emphasize that autism is difference, not deficit. What does that mean?
Yeah. And the way we think about that as different is part of a broader movement about what's called neurodiversity, which views autism and many other kind of related sources of neurodivergence like dyslexia, dyspraxia, other types of things. It's just kind of natural variation in ways in which we experience and process the world and people around us. And this movement away from deficit is important because I think so much historically about autism was about deficits, where let me give you one specific example, where historically there was research that suggested that autistic people don't experience empathy. They have a quote unquote weak theory of mind. Turns out none of that is true. And what's actually going on and why there might be misunderstandings and miscommunications between neurotypical and autistic folks is what's called the double empathy problem, which means that autistic folks might have difficulty understanding the perspective of a neurotypical person, but a neurotypical person similarly has difficulties understanding an autistic person. And in some recent research that's forthcoming with Valerie Martin, we look at a set of 9 autistic employees, 9 employers, and 9 job coaches. And what we find is this double empathy problem being a big source of why people might struggle at work. So managers who are neurotypical with their autistic employees kind of talking past each other and not having a shared sense of what actually a good employee kind of is. So this is a real foundational thing that we're trying to address in some of our work, is how to bridge this double empathy problem.
Wow, that's a tough one. And part of your work at the Frist Center involves learning how to create a more inclusive hiring environment for candidates on the autism spectrum. What have you learned and how can managers use it to improve their processes?
Yeah, so 2 things that we've identified. So first, with this double empathy problem, one way in which it can be bridged is managers being really explicit with their expectations and its goals, not assuming that things will be figured out and leaving things tacit, right? So being much clearer about what the expectations, what defines being a good employee. Because the employee manager pairs that we observed, where there was really divergence, was about interpersonal relationships and those kind of things, which were not stated job requirements. So the autistic employees were doing fine on their job tasks, but where they were maybe not fulfilling managers' expectations were around relationships and things they hadn't been explicitly told were an important part of the job. Another thing related to hiring, one thing that's exciting that we're doing at the Frist Center is we've developed this virtual hiring system. So people can come in and practice doing interviews with a AI-based system where it does natural language processing, but it also tracks your emotional response to different questions. So, kind of rapport building questions, behavioral questions, tell me about a time, so we can identify what questions stress people out and lead them to give lower quality answers, because interviews are a big challenge for autistic job candidates. And a lot of times where even highly skilled people get kind of pushed out of the process. So what we're using this for is to help coach autistic job candidates, but also give employers feedback about questions they might have that are systematically excluding or stressing out and leading people to get bad answers on autistic job candidates. So it gives feedback in terms of how can questions be made better. Maybe you could do something as simple as give people the questions in advance so they come in prepared, they're not stressed out by the question, or even thinking about, are there alternate assessments besides interviews that one could use to make sure people are demonstrating their skills and you're getting a good view about what a potential employee could do.
Yeah, well, that's exciting because it sounds so actionable, something that managers really can learn from and adopt. And, related to that, work environments have a direct correlation with worker productivity. So after you've hired someone, now how is that working out? And how can employers create a more comfortable environment for neurodiverse employees?
Yeah, so I think there are a couple things here as well. So one is, I think if employers are going to think about how do we intentionally diversify our workforce in terms of neurotypes, I think paying neurodivergent, that means you think differently, fundamentally. That's part of who you are. So if you have a culture that's based on fit, you're going to be excluding those folks. So what we're trying to advocate for and kind of detail in some of our research is how do we think about cultures in terms of contribution? What does somebody actually add to the culture? And how can we harness the unique talents of people who might think differently, but in doing so, push our organization to the next level? That's one thing, thinking differently about culture. The other is about being consistent, clear, actionable, behavioral, and specific about feedback. So one of the things that comes up in a lot of the research that we do, that even if somebody gets a job, where things kind of fall apart is not getting ongoing feedback about the nature of their performance or things that can be done better in a sufficiently specific way. So behavior, processes, practices can be changed. So those are two big things that managers can do.
Well, thank you, Tim, for this really timely bit of research and something that's so useful and actionable to improve people's lives and productivity. And thank you for watching Vanderbilt Business Live.